dear adventurers. It's Dozing Knight. Welcome back to another quiet evening of shared tales and wandering through worlds unknown. Tonight, we set our sails toward a realm where time's march has softened to a gentle rustle among timeless olive trees. The echoes of a forgotten past flirt with the present in the land of myths and legends. Yes, we venture into the vibrant tapestry of ancient Greece, a place where gods and mortals, woven into intricate stories, inhabit the whispers of the wind. Imagine a world where the skies were once the playground of deities, and human fate was a tapestry woven with divine hands. The gods of ancient Greece walk among us tonight, their narratives alive with the kind of magic that holds the heart captive. Here, we shall meet mighty Zeus, whose thunderous presence commands the heavens, and wise Athena, her clever mind ever spinning threads of wisdom. Together, we'll unravel the mysteries of the gods whose stories are etched into the very bedrock of cultural memory. As we delve into these ancient tales, allow yourself to become entranced by the whispers of mythic heroes and legendary deeds. What are your thoughts on the impact of these age-old stories? Do they still resonate with you in your personal journey, or stir something deep within, calling to remembrances of heroic ventures long past? I invite you to share your musings and reflections with our welcoming community. Your perspective enriches our collective understanding and appreciation of these timeless scripts. If you find joy in evenings filled with storytelling wonder and the exploratory whimsy of these legends, I encourage you to join our growing circle of dreamers. Subscribe for more nights like these, where together we explore the manifold worlds awaiting beyond the veil of sleep. Your presence is a cherished part of this alluring adventure. Before we embark on tonight's journey, let us prepare our minds and bodies to welcome the serenity of slumber. Find a comfortable position, allowing your body to sink into its supporting surface. Begin with a slow, deep breath in, gently hold, and sigh it out, releasing the cares of the day. Feel the gentle rhythm of your breathing, like the ebb and flow of the tide, washing away tension, inviting tranquility in its place. Repeat this once more, inhaling peace, holding stillness, and exhaling all stress. Now that our spirits are calmly anchored, let the transition into the story world be as seamless as a quiet stroll along a moonlit path. Each breath invites us deeper, and the mind opens, ready to wander amongst the figments of antiquity. Tonight's adventure awaits, set against a backdrop where mortal courage meets the whims of capricious gods, and every shadowed corner could harbor an epic tale. Full of promise and wonder, let us step together into the invigorating ambience of old Greece, where the stars once shone upon the drama of immortals and humanity alike. The world was young in its bones, older than any reckoning of years, and the sky itself seemed woven of fog and high ancient memory. Upon the slopes of Mount Olympus, clouds gathered in muted billows that wound through dark cypresses and twisted olive groves. A hush lay across the mountain, as if all creation exhaled in slow, measured wonder at what transpired within its heights. Even birdsong, usually bright and sudden, softened here into quiet flourishes, lacquered with awe, diluted by mist. Nestled somewhere between cloud and stone, a throne of cold marble stood beneath a colonnade ringed with ivy. The marble gleamed slickly, kissed by dew, its veins hinting at light long since faded from the day. Jupiter blue sky flickered above, meeting the folds of vapor like a shroud. Here, untroubled by mortal eyes or noise, Zeus reigned in a quiet rarely spoken of in myths, his hand resting on the bolt at his side. The king's features were hewn from storm and serenity both. His beard, thick as wild laurel, gleamed with threads of silver cloud. He gazed out from Olympus, eyes reflecting the endless slow march of thunderheads and time. Around him, the other gods moved as shapes in the fog, each slipping in and out of vision, sometimes shadow, sometimes star, usually somewhere in between. Hera's footsteps, measured and deliberate, whispered over the cold stones. The goddess wore a mantle deep as midnight, stitched with the constellations she herself had pinned to the fabric of the cosmos. Her glance touched Zeus, lingered, then moved to survey the valley below, where mortals tilled fields they did not know were watched. Near the edge of the unbroken silence, Apollo tuned his golden lyre, plucking notes that slipped through the air with almost tangible warmth. Each tone shimmered like sunlight trickling through dew-dusted leaves, glinting briefly before being claimed by the grey, endless hush. The god's gaze wandered toward the woods, where Artemis, wild sister, swift and sure, walked beneath boughs heavy with moisture, her arrows silent in their quiver. As the first hesitant sunbeam pushed through the shroud, a faint blush spread across the stone. Slowly, the forms of the gods became clearer, yet never entirely distinct. The mist would not give up their mysteries so easily. Hermes drifted at the periphery, his winged sandals stirring only the faintest trace along the path. He hummed to himself, a tune that seemed part wind, part laughter, wholly inscrutable. Beyond these immortal ones, the mountain dropped away in precipitous cliffs, older than the tales whispered by poets. Rocks wore the pale green patina of lichen and the wisdom of millennia. In groves farther down, the tap of a nymph's footstep pressed the spongy earth, and the laughter of naiads trembled beneath the surface of woodland streams. Every creature, a hawk circling high, a boar rooting in deep leaves, a cricket smoothing its wings, seemed drawn, knowingly or not, toward Olympus, guided by some secret gravity. Evening approached with a bleak serenity, the sun receding behind layered veils of vapor and legend. The god's palace became ever more remote, its outlines blurred to myth. With each hour, the lines between story and stone wavered and faded, and the world seemed to contract around the mountain's ancient heart. Men and women in distant villages tossed in their sleep, dreaming of gods whose faces they could not recall by morning. But here, in the secret hollow above the clouds, divinity breathed through fog and marble, ageless as the mountain, patient as time. No mortal foot would disturb the hush tonight, only the slow pulse of the gods, waiting for their stories to unfurl, beat in the stillness. Down the mountain's veiled slopes wandered the breath of dusk, cool, replete with secrets. The forests encircling Olympus stretched for miles, their trees old and gnarled, tangled in roots and myth alike. Shadows, unrushed and aware, twined themselves around trunks of olive and pine. The air here was rich with the scent of earth after rain, layered with petals crushed by passing wildlife and moss cradled in the dark places beneath roots. Among these ancient woods drifted a solitary figure, Persephone, the silent daughter of Demeter, her presence so subtle it bent the patterns of the undergrowth. The maiden's dress mapped the seasons, skirt edged with blossoms, bodice cool and green, dark hair entwined with poppies and strands of wheat. As Persephone moved, ferns uncurling in her wake, wildflowers leaned closer, offering color to her steps. Demeter's voice pulsed, carried by the wind, a song barely more than a murmur, woven through every leaf and branch. The Great Mother lingered at the boundary between grove and meadow, her hands trailing through tall grass. Where she walked, seeds swelled with silent promise. To any observer, the silence would have seemed complete, yet to the gods, it bristled with listening, with dormant possibility. Deeper into the shade, a stag watched, motionless, his dark eyes wide and reverent. Few dared approach the grove when Persephone passed. Nightingale's song rose, then dipped, spiraling smoke-like into the grey. Across a stream slick with pebbles and moonlight, a cluster of naiads linked hands, their laughter soft as falling petals. Even they, capricious as wind, grew gentle in Persephone's presence. A pale breeze stirred the leaves, carrying scents of laurel, thyme, and something colder, green and bruised, the memory of winter. Shadows shifted beneath oak and poplar. Now and then, a shape would flicker at the forest's edge. Perhaps Pan, crouched and grinning from the crook of a branch, or perhaps only a deer, startled by the perfume of distant thunder. The boundaries here between God and nature were porous, ever shifting as the folds of mist. Deeper still, Artemis tracked the progress of a white hind along leaf-dappled paths. Her keen gaze flickered, every feathered shaft, every muscle's tension observed with calm, predatory patience. The huntress's approach inspired neither fear nor flight. Rather, the woods seemed to hold its breath in anticipation, as if the air itself might unravel at her command. As twilight thickened, Persephone paused at a glade where moonlight fell in silver ribbons onto moss. Here, she knelt, pressing her fingers into rich black earth, feeling its cold, unmoving comfort. The world was very old beneath her, a sediment of seasons, a tapestry of faded stories and hidden roots. She listened, eyes half closed, as if waiting for the earth to speak. In the hush, the ancient woods bared their soul, slowly, quietly. Somewhere nearby, an owl called, announcing the arrival of night. Persephone traced the call with her thoughts, drifting towards sleep, even as her spirit wound more tightly into the land. The air was thick with expectation, with the near-forgotten rustle of gods hidden among the pines. The woods themselves, vast and dignified, relished this gentle intrusion, for they remembered what men had lost, that all things great and small are watched, cherished and recorded by the unseen. In this slow hour, every leaf and tendril leaned in, witness to the presence of the divine. Night, ancient and profound, drew its curtain across the world, and the woods sighed their secrets to those who listened. Beyond the living hush of the forests, a stone road unwound through olive groves, curling downward to a quiet plain. Here rested a temple, its columns pale as bone, veiled by the drifting vapors that nightly rose from the earth. The air among these stones tasted of memory and incense, sharp, resinous, yet softened by the cool breath of dusk. Lanterns flickered at the threshold, their flame gold and wavering, hinting at warmth within stone sanctity. The temple honored Athena, she of unyielding wisdom and silent vigilance. A carved owl presided over the lintel, its wide eyes ageless, ceaselessly observing mortal comings and goings. Above, the roof arched in timbers blackened by age, fragrant with the smoke of centuries' offerings. On this evening, the priest, a stooped man named Timon, made his quiet rounds. His robes were frayed by years of ritual, their color, once midnight blue, long since faded to dusky grey. Timon's sandals whispered over flagstone, and with each step he gathered silence behind him, like a cloak trailing its hem. He paused at the altar, where the marble bore fine lines from long washing and the press of countless careful hands. Rich olive oil glimmered in a dish, catching the lamplight. Sprigs of laurel and a pinch of honey gleamed beside a bowl of barley, the smallest tribute to the unseen. Timon reverently poured a measure of wine, red as pomegranate, letting it spill in slow, crimson arcs across the altar. The surface darkened briefly, then drank the gift. Above him, the statue of Athena loomed, her gaze stern, yet indefinably gentle, lips shaped midway between command and comfort. The air seemed to shift within the transept, and for an instant, Timon felt himself watched, not by stone, but by something vaster, a wisdom that weighed the hearts of men, that listened to every prayer, no matter how secret or small. Outside the temple, the earliest crickets began their chorus. Their rhythm echoed through the columns, mingling with the distant, solemn murmur of a hidden spring. The lilt of mortal voices, a mother's hush, a child's laugh, rose and fell against the walls, faint as candle smoke. The temple did not forget such moments. Its stones became dense with memories, their quiet solidity holding the pulse of generations. Timon lingered, arranging the offerings with meticulous grace. He lit a stick of myrrh and watched its smoke spiral upward, thin, grey, prismatic in lamplight. Within its meandering drift, he imagined the shapes of stories. Athena guiding a young king, a city rising beneath her shield, wisdom dawning on a child at dawn. The gods, he knew, did not always reveal themselves with thunder or miracle. Sometimes their touch was softer, a nudge, a thought, a silence between breaths. As the last light faded, Timon knelt, hands folded. In the hush, he surrendered his thoughts to the presence permeating the ancient temple, breathing the invisible air of myth and devotion. For a moment, his heartbeat slowed, matching the stone patience of the pillars. Beyond the doors, the world slept, carried by a wind that wove gently through olive branches and hollowed marble halls. In that stillness, the temple seemed to breathe, a living structure forged from time, worship, and secrets. Echoes of 1,000 prayers, each barely more than a sigh, gathered in the corners. Tonight, as ever, the gods listened, not with judgment, but with the slow, enduring care of those who have always watched and always will. West of the foothills, where forest gave way to sun-damp meadows and sedge, wound a river that sang with the hush of secrets. Its waters, fed by distant mountain springs, moved in silver spirals through reeds and moon-touched lilies. Every nighttime ripple carried the memory of gods, of nymphs stirring just beneath the surface, gliding invisible between beds of waving grass. By this river, the sounds of the mortal world softened to whispers. Oxen lowing in distant fields, a shepherd's song fading into silence. The river's banks, warm still with memory of the sun, offered a gentle resting place for any who sought refuge from the day's demands. Frogs crooned quietly in the reeds. A kingfisher traced bright arcs above the glimmering current, its colors gone smoky in the soft dusk. In a quiet eddy near a willow, a boy named Nicias sat, his legs dangling in the cool flow. His world, though small, ticked to the pulse of old legends. The elders spoke of gods who took their ease beside these waters, Artemis cleansing her arrows, Hermes teaching the fish to leap. To Nicias, the river was a teacher too. Its patience comforted him, its soft churn of pebble and root promising that the world would not forget him. Above the water, the air hung thick with the perfume of mint and wild myrtle, blending with the breeze that carried the far-off clash of a distant festival. Nicias watched a leaf tumble past, spinning slowly, its journey untroubled by haste. He wondered what it was like for the gods, gazing down upon rivers and groves. Did they notice every ripple, remember every shadow? Or were they lost in their own myths, their stories old as the stones themselves? The river answered not in words but in motion, its surface shimmering with moonlight, holding the gentle reflection of willow leaves. Somewhere upstream, the faint pluck of a lyre tangled with the burble of water, too distant to recognize, close enough to shape his dreams. Nicias closed his eyes and listened, surrendering to the slow hypnosis of current and clattering reed. A dragonfly hovered, its wings barely moving, thin as whispers. It landed on the boy's knee, a tiny avatar of the natural world. Nicias regarded it with fond respect, for to touch a dragonfly was, according to the stories, to brush the mantle of the gods. Even now, old Demeter, wild Pan, and the river spirits moved unseen beside him, threading ancient laughter between the reeds' soft sibilance. The sky deepened from lavender to deep indigo, stars peering through as timid yet persistent flames. The Milky Way, that river of gods, spilled across the heavens, mirroring the slow drift of water below. Nicias leaned back, palms flat on moss, and imagined Perseus flying overhead, Pegasus stamping sparks beneath invisible hooves. He wondered if the gods, too, listened for the river's lullaby on quiet nights like this one. As the moon inched higher, the river seemed to draw breath, its song softening even further, promising nothing, yet holding all the stories of ages past. Nicias, resting on the bank, felt his eyelids grow heavy, the current weaving through his thoughts as sleep approached. Only the silver water and the ancient scent of willow would watch over him for the rest of the night. East of the river, in a valley shielded by high, stony ridges, unfolded a garden ancient as the gods themselves. Here, time swayed in gentle loops, petals drifting downward as if the world paused to watch. The garden was encircled by laurel and myrtle, with slender columns of cypress forming silent green sentinels. Dew hung on every blade, glinting in the first refractions of moonlight. Within these borders, moonflowers unfurled with languorous grace, their petals pale and tinged with the faintest blush of gold. Purple iris stood tall, nodding in the slight breeze as though acknowledging some unseen procession. Fountains trickled between marble statues half swallowed by ivy, their faces calm, their stone eyes closed, as if forever dreaming. Hestia, the goddess of hearth and home, sat quietly on a bench of worn limestone, her presence gentle, unhurried. She fed a small fire cupped in a shallow brazier, the flame glowing soft and steady. Hestia's gaze passed over the flowers and the sculptures, watched the slow dance of shadow and burnished light. Here, among the blossoms and vines, she presided over peace. In the garden, all sounds carried a sweetness. The air was alive with the hum of bees still lingering in the velvety dusk, and the rare, sonorous call of a nightjar slipping between the boughs. Their music rolled through the garden's low hedges, blending with the burble of water and the whisper of grass. A nymph, her name lost to history, but enshrined since in root and stone, tiptoed along the fountain's edge, scattering droplets with each step. The nymph trailed her fingers in the water, stirring circles that expanded, never breaking, only fading into the dark. Each circle, it was said, carried a wish from mortal hearts to the gods. Hestia watched, smiling, content to listen rather than speak. This night, the garden was visited by Thanatos, lord of gentle sleep. His cloak flowed noiseless as fog, his footsteps burdenless. He joined Hestia beside the fire, and the goddess nodded once. Together they sat, neither disturbing the hush. Thanatos lifted his hand, and blossoms closed their petals, exhaling fragrance as they surrendered to slumber. Fireflies rose in gentle clusters, their lights flickering among the leaves like the fleeting thoughts of gods just before dreams reclaim them. The glow gathered at the center, rising and falling with the garden's slow breath. No night's violence or sorrow trespassed here, for Hestia's hearth and Thanatos' touch were woven into every crumbling brick, every vine curling upward into the dusk. A child, lost to sleep among wild thyme, murmured soft words no one would remember by morning. Hestia blessed him quietly, her warmth flowing outward, touching every living thing within the garden's sanctuary. Roots curled deeper, petals folded inward with trust. Peace, rare in the wider world, was common bloom here. Above, stars pressed against the deep sky, hazy with the breath of gods and ancient incense. In this secluded haven, the night itself seemed to rest, buoyed by the slow, measured pulse of the hearth flame and the gentle passing of sleep. The garden waited, patient and undisturbed, until dawn would stir again, and the gods would slip like fragrance from blossom and dew. Night deepened, and the world shrank to soft outlines. Garden, river, and forest woven together by the same silken dark. Across the foothills, narrow paths, barely more than seams through undergrowth, glimmered faintly in the moon's uncertain light. These were ancient roads once trodden by gods, mortals, and things neither, each path bearing the print of 1,000 lost journeys. Along one such path moved a traveler. Her name was Callianera, a priestess of distant ancestry, her hair streaked with the pale silver of wisdom and sleepless nights. Wrapped in a hooded cloak, Callianera carried a thin staff of ash, tapping it softly as she walked. In her satchel nestled scrolls, their parchment brittle as old leaves, inscribed with the inked memory of many hands. Each step she took disturbed dust ancient as myth itself. Stars peered warily through the branches, silvered gleams reflected in puddles from last night's rain. The path coiled beneath her feet, guiding Callianera deeper into the heart of the sacred wild. She walked not for fame or offerings, but to gather the lore that time had set aside. Scraps of tale, names half remembered, places where the gods once paused to ponder. Here and there, the forest pressed close, roots intertwined with secrets, leaves veined with the memory of prayers. At intervals, the priestess paused to listen. A soft rustle might be a dryad shifting within her tree. A gust might carry the laughter of a satyr hidden under fern. Callianera bent, plucked a feather, shining wet with dew, and tucked it silently into her scrolls. Even the smallest relic became an offering to wisdom. Where the path narrowed against a sharp escarpment, she found a carving so worn by wind and shadow that only the suggestion of a face remained. Her fingertips traced its outline, perhaps Apollo, perhaps Pan, perhaps a time before names altogether. She recited a quiet invocation, an old rhyme, barely more than breath, and the air around her tingled, alive with listening. Deeper she walked, into a hollow where moonbeams pooled. There, at the foot of an olive tree, more ancient than any temple, grew a patch of violets. Callianera knelt, whispering words of gratitude, and drew from her satchel a sliver of cheese and a piece of honeycomb. She left these beneath the low branches, her prayer joining the 1,000 layered before her, harmonizing with the long patience of root and leaf. The lore carried her onward. Breezes brushed her brow, sometimes warm with memory, sometimes cold as prophecy. Images flickered through her mind. Apollo's chariot burning a rim across dawn, Athena's hand steadying the spear in a trembling hero's grasp, Demeter's weeping mirrored in the field's slow withering. Stories, she knew, shaped the earth. In their silent passage, they left seeds for new wonder. By the time Callianera emerged into a small clearing, the night had grown heavy with velvet darkness, and her mind spun with the delicate web of insights gathered. She sat beneath the stars and unfurled her scrolls, watching moonlight chase itself over ink and parchment. The past, written in gentle fragments, quietly became part of her, as the gods, watching, listening, blessed these pathways with eternal memory. The world, now fully bathed in silent dark, seemed to hold its breath, as if waiting for the next step, the next gentle unfolding of myth and dream along forgotten paths. Night's hush pooled thickest beneath the interwoven branches of the sacred laurel grove. Here, lantern glow did not trespass. Only moonlight, sifted fine as flour through the damp green canopy, lazed onto the forest floor. The scent of crushed laurel was heavy, emerald sweet, almost too potent for mortals to bear. In the stillness, air hung expectant, as if pressing in to listen for the softest whisper or the beat of a single godly pulse. On the edge of this grove, a fox with russet fur nosed between laurels, pausing beneath a cluster of glistening berries. Its ears flicked at the muffled suggestions of owl feathers above. The fox's journey was unhurried, every movement guided by a wisdom old as night. The animal, neither wholly of the wild nor the world of men, moved like a small spirit in the dark, respected by the woodland gods and whispered about in children's bedtime tales. Somewhere nearer to the heart of the grove, Apollo reclined in the crook of a massive laurel. His fingers trailed over his lyre's strings, producing tones finer than silence itself, notes that hovered just beneath the threshold of sound, stirring the air like a half-remembered lullaby. The music was meant not for mortals, but for the trees, whose leaves shimmered silently at the touch of divine melody. A gentle breeze shifted overhead, carrying faint perfumes: myrtle, pine, the sharp green clarity unique to these hallowed branches. A nightingale, perched high, answered Apollo's music with an echo so soft it seemed imagined. The grove responded in kind. Bark glistened, dew gathered at every leaf's tip, and the roots below hummed quietly with the assurance of centuries. The fox settled in a patch of leaf-mulched earth, curling its tail about its nose, eyes glowing faint gold. Sleep weighed close, but not so much that the fox could not listen. It dreamed with ears pricked, sensitive to every tremble of music or step of ghost in the brush. Some said such creatures heard the gods in ways mortals could not, distinguishing the true from the merely wished for, reading fate in scattered petals and the changing winds. Within the heart of the laurel grove, old stones marked forgotten altars. Moss covered them like a memory's caress, and star-shaped mushrooms climbed the crumbled flanks. Here, generations of whispered prayers had seeped into the ground. Every dawn, dew would collect atop these stones, holding the silver reflection of a god's hidden smile. Apollo's presence brought calm. His hands, resting on the lyre strings, shaped the moment, molding stillness from the fabric of the deep night. Laurel leaves swayed gently overhead, neither wind nor time pushing them, but rather the divine gravity of peace. The fox, lulled into perfect tranquility, let his eyes drift closed, surrendering to the soft spell wound by song and shadow. Above, constellations pressed close to the canopy, their stories twining with the songs below. The world beyond the grove had grown distant, every anxiety softened to a slow exhale of fog. The quiet within Laurel's embrace endured, untouched by the clamor of men, remembered only by those few who slipped, fox, nightingale, or god, beneath its sheltering branches. Along a high ridge, where fog congealed in ribbons between the roots of ancient cypress, a garden cut its pattern into the slope, a mosaic of pale, silvery leaves and luminous blooms that opened only to moonlight. This was the garden of Selene, moon goddess, where no sunbeam had ever trespassed. Every night, as fog deepened, the world below melted from memory, leaving only the garden, a realm suspended between silence and dream. Selene herself, tranquil as midnight, drifted among the beds of flowering night-blooming jasmine, her gown a spill of gossamer that drank the moon's cold shine. She bent now and then to brush her hand over silver-petaled asphodels clustered in the shadows, each one folding into her touch as softly as sleep. Orchids, pale as ghosts, trailed their roots from high branches, their blossoms shivering on the breath of an unseen wind. The crescent moon rose slowly above the distant sea, scattering faint reflections onto damp grass and trembling petals. No bird sang here, only moths, a kingdom of quiet wings, spiraled in the lamp-like pools of lunar radiance. Selene paused at a mirror pool, its surface unbroken, rimmed with smooth white quartz. Within its depths, stars gleamed, distant yet intimate, peering up as if seeking the goddess's blessing. Selene leaned closer, her reflection mingling with constellations, her eyes shining with the wisdom of countless silent nights. From the garden's edge, a breeze wandered, carrying the perfume of lavender and cool earth. In its wake, the fog stirred, curling around marble columns and thick hedges. Occasionally, a shadow slipped across the grass, perhaps a hare, perhaps the echo of a long vanished nymph. Nothing here disturbed the reign of gentleness and stillness. Celine's footsteps, light as snow, left no trace. She moved between lilies tall as sculptures, between cypresses whose trunks gleamed wetly in the moon's embrace. Her gown caught on a thorn, tugged gently, but she smiled and freed it with a touch as old as sleep itself. In the garden, time diffused. Every second stretched longer, every breath pooled with peace. In secluded corners, moonlit dew clung to spider silk, pearling it with droplets that refracted the size of dreams unspoken. Selene hummed softly, her song too quiet for mortal ears. A lullaby meant as much for the stars as for the sleeping earth. The moon now sat high, its light sifting through the garden, washing everything in a delicate pallor. No hurry pressed upon this sacred place. No shadow threatened peace. Only Selene's song, the faint rustle of petals, and the caress of fog marked the passing of the hour. In the garden's center stood a single white rose, blooming even through the deep heart of night. Selene carried a pearl droplet from her pool and placed it gently onto the rose. The delicate blossom trembled, then deepened its hue, the scent rising strong and sweet. This, too, became part of the night's memory, sealed within Selene's garden, lingering long after all else fell silent. Toward the mountain's flank, where rock gave way to polished terraces, hid the sanctuary, a tranquil refuge carved deep within veined white marble. Its walls, worn pale as old driftwood, glimmered in the faint wash of reflected moonlight. The air here felt denser, cooled by centuries, weighted with the calm that follows answered prayers. Within the sanctuary's embrace, a mosaic floor depicted the gods in vine-wreathed procession: Apollo with his sunburst lyre, Athena and her owl, Demeter robed in green, Persephone threading poppies through her braids. Colors, once fierce, had mellowed with age, as gentle as dawn held between clouds. Irenaeus, the old keeper, drifted quietly among the alcoves. He carried a lamp whose flame shivered gently, casting long shadows on arch and column. His steps made the only sound, a soft memory of sandaled feet. It was his lifelong duty and comfort to tend this place, to dust the altars, polish offered coins, and ensure the everlasting oil never failed in the goddess niches. Tonight, all remained as Irenaeus had left it. The last faithful had departed hours ago. The air held layered scents, burnt sage, honey wax from neglected candles, and the faint mineral tang of stone. Sometimes when the world outside fell completely silent, Irenaeus fancied he could hear the gods whispering. Their voices mingled with the hush circling the marble, patient and nodding approval. An alcove at the far end of the sanctuary honored Hecate, goddess of thresholds and secret ways. Her image was carved in relief, 3 faces watching past, present, future, holding twin torches whose fluted stone gave off nothing but the suggestion of light. Irenaeus set his lamp beneath her feet, murmuring old words that soothed his bones. Guide us through shadow, light all crossings. He moved then to the central altar, ringed by offerings. Grain in a clay bowl, sprigs of rosemary, a thread of wool. Flickers of old sacrifices lingered in the air, hints of fire and charcoal, and the memory of those who once wept or rejoiced here. Irenaeus pressed his palm to the marble, feeling the cool pulse of centuries run through the stone. Clouds shifted outside, and moonlight washed the sanctuary in a holiness deeper than any word or hymn. The old keeper slid into a niche beneath an arch, eyes tracing the mosaic gods, lips shaping a final blessing. Tranquility settled across marble, dust, and flickering flame, binding sanctuary and sleeper together in gentle accord. No footsteps would echo in these halls tonight. Only the wind, a shy visitor, slipped through a gap near the roof, caressing pillar and altar alike. In the crystalline dark, every corner held more than shadow. It sheltered comfort and the assurance that here, the immortal and the mortal might share peace, if only for a single, infinite hour of night. Lower still, in the roots beneath marble and olive, sleep flowed through all things, rooting dreams in the black loam of myth. Each stone, each tree, seemed to lean nearer to the earth, as if listening for secrets whispered between worlds. In these hidden places, Irene, the goddess of peace, passed unseen, her presence winding through root and shadow with delicate purpose. Irene's form was gentle grace personified, robed in mist and clothed in a hush deeper than dusk. She breathed calm wherever she went. Crocuses unfurled at the touch of her bare feet, their color emerging with the day's last wish. Streams quieted themselves, birds softened into sleep, and even restless minds at last found their exhale. In a quiet glade, Irene knelt beside a shallow pool, its water dark and glassy beneath the adoring gaze of bulrush and fern. She scattered olive branches onto the mirrored surface, watching as the leaves spun, then stilled, each one anchoring silence, rippling peace outward in small, circular pulses. Elsewhere, in lean-to cottages or beneath marble columns, mortals surrendered to slumber. Nicias, the boy by the river, curled into soft moss, his fingertips brushing droplets of dew. Timon, the temple priest, lay on woven rushes within Athena's hallowed walls, dreams winding through his head like slow music. Callianira unrolled her cloak in the hollow beneath the olive tree, scrolls tucked safely beneath her pillow of gathered grass. For each sleeper, Irene sent a whisper, a cool touch upon brow, a gentle sigh meant only for the soul's hidden depths. In their dreams, forests bloomed anew, temples gleamed as if washed in morning sun, and rivers ran smooth over ancient stone. No fear reached them here. No worry scuttled along the seams of the night. Across the world, the gods laid aside their weight. Hermes set down his winged staff. Artemis slackened the tension in her bow. Apollo plucked the final resonant note. Zeus himself closed his eyes, thunderbolts forgotten as Hera settled alongside. Even Hestia's gentle fire burned lower, its amber glow breathing warmth into the cool sanctuary of night. Sleep crept gently, an undercurrent far stronger than fate, binding mountain and valley, divine and mortal, in the same soft tapestry. Irene moved from shadow to starbreak, toes stirring petals, hands smoothing troubled brows until all hearts slowed to calm. Her smile lingered on every sleeping form. Only the smallest creatures remained awake, a fox blinking in the laurel, an owl's eyes shining like twin moons. Even their thoughts, sharp and wild, dulled to a slower pulse, lulled by the command of the deep-set peace. And in this slow hour, the undercurrent of sleep grew vast as a sea, carrying all who trusted in its tide softly toward dreams, yet unspoken. Dreams poured from the chalice of ancient gods and quiet earth. Above Olympus, fog gathered in sheets, luminous and unhurried as old silk. The mountain's crown vanished tonight, hidden from even the sharpest gaze, lost to the swirling embrace of clouds. Here, amid vapor and the pale glow of the rising moon, memory drifted like a fleet of quiet ships. The gods themselves seemed woven from this mist, bodies indistinct, faces filmed by the passing of eons. Hera lingered at the edge of the colonnade, pearls of condensation tracing the curve of her wrist. She watched the world below and saw not simple mortals, but all the woven tethers of fate. Each dream, each hope, each soft terror carried upward by night's gentle draught. Asteria, goddess of falling stars, joined her, bearing a halo of soft twilight about her brow. Together, they listened for lost prayers, the sound more a feeling than a word. The fog shifted, drawing visions. Sometimes a maiden weaving at the hearth, sometimes a shepherd's laugh echoing through the dusk, sometimes only a single tear, shining and weightless, cast up as offering. On the slopes below, memories thickened. Echoes of children's games stirred the grass. Invisible feet pressed winding paths through time and sage. Stones hummed with the tales of centuries, receiving every scattered wish and regret. Even the rivers and fields, dormant under haze, curled closer to the mountain's heart, craving the peace nestled within memory's grasp. Now and then, the fog itself whispered. Hard lines blurred, voices blended with the hush. Aphrodite moved through garden shadow, the scent of sea foam and rose crowding the air, her laughter a chime carried by wind. Hephaestus's forge fires, long banked, glowed faint and smouldering within a cloud's heart, warm embers persisting quietly against eternity's night. In this softened world, time fluttered more slowly. Each moment seemed forever. Each breath carried on currents deeper than the eye could trace. Gods, ghosts, and sleeping mortals. Each came to rest in the folds of cloud, surrendering their cares to a silence more vast than any hymn. And at the very peak, where clouds gathered in greatest density, Persephone stood alone. Beside her, the pomegranate glimmered, its crimson seeds tucked fast against her palm. Closing her eyes, she listened to the ancient pulse, the world's cyclic breath, the slow turning of seasons, the heartbeat of those both above and below. In this fog, all was reconciled, earth and sky, sorrow and joy, memory and forgetting. The fog thickened with dreams. For every soul on Olympus and in the valleys below, clouds brought the memory of comfort, the gentle press of what had been loved and lost and would yet be loved again. At last, darkness succumbed to a gradual silvering. The first breath of dawn furled gently through the mists, gathering in slow, luminous drifts on the slopes of Olympus. Night receded not in defeat, but as a quiet granting of space, an invitation for new stories to emerge. The fog lingered, hesitant to surrender its precious weight, but edged backward as light, soft as spun wool, crept between olive and laurel, over marble and moss. A still, small hush held the mountain. as if all Olympus paused between one heartbeat and the next. Stars dimmed above, growing bashful in the presence of morning's gentle courage. The gods, each in their chosen sanctuary atop the mountain, roused slowly, their forms caught in the bloom of silvery glow. Zeus opened his eyes to find the world brightening. No storm in his gaze now, only quiet reflection. River reeds stirred with renewed life. Nicias, boy of the riverbank, blinked in soft surprise as sun kissed his cheek, scattering dreams like petals on water. He stretched, listening to the hush that blanketed grove and meadow, a rare music, old as longing and hope. Hestia breathed warmth into the garden's heart, coaxing fires to a quiet awakening. Thin columns of smoke slipped up to meet the sky, melting into dawn's wide embrace. In the sanctuary below, Irenaeus woke and rose, brushing a hand over the mosaic floor, its colors brightening with the hour. All along Olympia's slopes, mortals and immortals alike shifted. Stirring from the cradling arms of sleep, the fox stretched in the laurel shade, nosed a dew-bejeweled berry, and slipped away. Somewhere in shadow, a songbird found its first notes, a hesitant call, rising with the golden tide of light. Souls, refreshed by dreams, stretched into morning, finding the shape of promise in the world's slow revelation. Hermes crossed the sky, cap lifted in greeting, as he scattered the last of the night's fog with a sweep of his winged staff. Artemis, her arrows restful in their quiver, parted the branches and welcomed a day not troubled by need for hunt. Selene vanished, her garden folding itself into legend, waiting to bloom and shine again with the next deep dusk. Here, on Olympus and throughout its shadowed domains, peace lingered with the final shreds of mist, soothing, boundless, enduring. No conflict marred these first gentle hours, only the soft pulse of old earth and a new song threading sky and root. Hearts, both divine and mortal, beat in tranquil rhythm. As the sun crested the horizon and suffused the world in shimmering gold, all shadows eased, and the mountain returned to silence. The gods waited among the clouds, patient for the stories the new day would hold. For now, the only sound was the steady sigh of wind and river, carrying the peace of night softly into the arms of waking. In this hour, as the old world slowly unfurled itself to light, every soul, god, creature, mortal, found rest. The gentle warmth of dawn spread across the land, a benediction that would cradle the world until the cycles began anew. In Olympus and beyond, sleep faded, but peace remained, woven lightly through the veil of new beginnings.